All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final match of the MOL3 tournament. This is the grand finals between our top two teams, which are RP Farmers, which are going to be on the blue side, and of course Hebrews, Chapter 420. I, of course, am Jubilee, and joined with me is the ever so wonderful and highly knowledgeable Invisi.
G'day everyone, and looks like we're straight into the champion select, and already we've got some mid lane target bans happening. Of course, that Orianna ban we saw in our last series, RP Farmers, Lush on that Orianna was absolutely massive in that game one, and Sejuani again a target ban. We saw Chronosphere playing that both games last series, so Hebrews Chapter 420's definitely been doing their research.
Absolutely, just paying attention on what's happening within this tournament. Of course, Hebrews doing a really good job in this tournament, being able to come out on top. And of course, we saw, like you mentioned, RP Farmers doing a phenomenal job, especially Lush with that Orianna play, let alone in the second game, I believe he played a Xerath and did very well with that champion also.
Yeah, so the Gragas is locked in after two jungle bans have gone in Chronosphere's way. In fact, that Nunu was banned against Chronosphere both games last series, so I haven't actually seen him play it, but if every team they've played against that I've seen wants to ban it against him, he's clearly got some experience on that champion.
But right now it is Gragas being locked in along with a Shyvana and the Hecarim. With Shyvana being locked in, it's a champion that's usually used with the double smite combo. Is that something that we'll probably see from Hebrews?
We'll have to wait and see what they choose to go with, but I would not be surprised to see that come out at all. Of course, we saw Salty Chips do that both games last series, and we'll have to see whether Zenria does decide to change over to that smite and play that Shyvana. Of course, Shyvana capable of jungling as well, Hecarim capable of playing in the top lane, so we may see those two switch around, but at the moment I would expect to see that Shyvana in the top lane and the Hecarim in the jungle, so we'll have to see what the response is from RP Farmers.
I'm just waiting for that response right now. Looks like a Morgana being hovered over, and seeing what Lush is going to pick. I doubt that Lush will actually end up playing that Morgana mid lane, considering it seems like they put a lot of priority on Lush in that mid lane in order to help them get through the games.
Yeah, well, he's got very, very well-known lane opponent this time, going to be playing against one of the best mid laners in the region, so we'll have to see whether he can hold his own and potentially, you know, even dominate his lane against Choo-Choo's like he did last series against Best Feeder Peter, I believe his name was, and of course Hebrews, they're going to leave Choo-Choo's their last pick for the final counter pick, so they want to give him as much chance as possible to really dominate that mid lane.
Yeah, and I really like that decision from Hebrews Chapter 420 to wait for that mid lane pick in order to get a really good matchup that's in their favor. I wonder if he is going to go with that Xerath pick, considering that he's such a safe farmer, but Zed is on the board. So if Choo-Choo's does decide to pick up that Zed into that Xerath, Lush is going to have a little bit of a difficult time.
Yeah, quite possibly. And of course, Choo-Choo's very well known for that Zed, been playing that for a number of years. So yeah, it's a bit of risky. It looks like he might even be going for the Lulu. So yeah, Lulu going to work well with a Jinx, you know, give her a little bit of extra speed during the fight and then allow her to clean up on her own at the end. We'll have to wait and see what their top laner is to see what their comp rounds out to, but they've really been liking that Jinx. Kuki been playing that Jinx. I believe he picked it both games last series, sorry. And, you know, he's really shown a lot of proficiency on that Jinx. They were hovering over a Shen, but it looks like Dr. Mundo is going to be the pick. And Dr. Mundo, quite a competent smite top laner, if I do say so myself. He's never, you know, Flash has always been good on him, but he's a surprisingly good duelist. Like, Mundo is a very surprisingly good duelist. He gets a lot of AD from his E, so you know, if you can duel him, and of course with the Cinderhulk giving him extra % health, you know, that's only going to make his ultimate even more potent. And Choo Choo's looks like he might be hovering over a mid Shogath. He's just Junie just hovering over a whole bunch of different choices. Choo Choo's really has the pick of whatever he wants to play right now.
Absolutely. I mean, Zed was the first thing that was being hovered over. It's actually a Teemo being locked in.
Wow.
That is going to be a placeholder, perhaps? We are going to get that checked out right now.
Yeah, we'll just get this. We'll find out what's happening right now, and it was a placeholder pick for Vladimir. So Choo Choo's will actually be playing Vladimir in that game.
Okay,
so apparently Junie doesn't own any champions.
Okay, so Junie doesn't own any champions, so it will be Vladimir. So that means it's going to be potentially that Lulu, if the Morgana does not get put into the mid lane, is going to be that Lulu going up against that Vladimir.
And as you say that, you know, if that Morgana does not get put into the mid lane, I'm not sure how much Luch plays Morgana, but Morgana is actually a very good counter pick to Vladimir. I've had a fair amount of experience with that matchup, and in fact, you know, she has the wave there to be able to deal with his shoving. She has the shield for a little bit of sustain, and of course her passive is very good sustain. People underestimate Morgana's sustain in lane thanks to her passive. A lot of people don't know what it actually does. Morgana's passive gives her spell vamp, so you know she gets a bit of lane sustain, and then come level 6 she just bursts him. She just goes all in and bursts him because you use that soul shackles, and untargetability doesn't actually break tethers, so you can't actually pull out of Morgana's soul shackles. You will still take the damage and you will still get stunned. So it looks like it's going to be Luch playing the Lulu and the Esk on the Morgana as we expected, but just a little bit of info for you guys. Morgana is actually very good against Vladimir.
But this could be something similar to Lush on that Orianna going up against Best Feeder Peter on that Vladimir, where she ended up starting that shield and did a really good job of trading against him. Lulu, at the same sense, does have a shield available, so potentially we could be seeing Lush start shield, try to mitigate some of that early damage that Choo Choo's will be able to put out on Vladimir.
Yeah, so Lulu's shield definitely not quite as strong as Orianna's. I'm not actually sure what it's I'm actually just looking up now. It is oh no, it is 80 at level 1. Okay, I thought it was 60, so I'm wrong there. But the important thing, not only does Orianna's shield give her, you know, 80 health at level 1, which is really, really massive, it also gives her 10 armor and magic resist while ever the ball is on top of her. So it just makes her defensive capabilities even greater. So Lulu doesn't quite have the same shield potential, and often she really does want to start that glitter lance. Just, you know, the extra damage is nice, and the slow is really what's important with that glitter lance in the early trading. So I would imagine Luch probably not going to start with his shield at level 1, probably will take it at level 2, and he will Lulu in this lane. Vladimir is fairly weak early laner, so you know Luch is going to have the opportunity to punish early, but he really is going to need to get some kills onto Choo Choo's early in the game, you know, pre-6, because once you get into level 7, 8, 9, Vladimir really just does become unstoppable. So maybe expect Chronosphere to show up since the early levels into the mid lane, try and get some kills onto Choo Choo's.
Absolutely, and of course with summoners being revealed, we could see from both teams double smite composition coming out from both sides. RP farmers have implemented a lane swap in every single game so far. Is that something that they will do in this game? And actually, will it end up just being normal lanes, considering that smite is also being taken on Zenria?
Quite possibly. So the double smites open up a lot of different level 1 plays for both teams. Of course, we'll probably see both you know, top laners, both smite teleport players, going for an early jungle camp, just because they can, because they have the smite to take it and then the teleport to get back to lane. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at level 1, and I reckon both teams are going to be doing something interesting.
Absolutely, but guys, we're going to be getting onto the Rift fairly soon. We're going to toss it to some ads. Who's going to win? Is it going to be RP Farmers or Hebrews chapter 420 in this first game of best of 3? Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we are back and we are on the rift of the first game of this best of three for the grand finals between RP Farmers on the blue side and, of course, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 20 over on the red side. Level 1, and everybody's running down mid lane looking for a possible lane swap.
Yeah, so I wonder whether they'll both choose the same way. No, we'll actually see once what we actually saw in the final game of the previous series, where both teams just mirroring each other, going into the opposite sides of the jungle. Really, just the true rotation here. They're just both rotating around the center of the map, and both teams looking to get some wards in the opposing jungle, looking to scout for lane swaps, especially. And both teams are going to find... We see Hebrews, they've got their early ward down, and Salty Chips just puts one down for RP Farmers as well. They have been spotted. I do believe that... yeah, so we saw a multitude of red pings at the top side as soon as Salty Chips went out, because I think he must have just been spotted by the tower, because as soon as he went out, like we said, we saw all of those red pings. So looks like Hebrews are going to have a fairly good idea that their jungle has been warded. And, you know, RP Farmers can make a pretty educated guess that their jungle's warded as well. So, you know, Chronosphere not going alone. He's actually hesitating quite a bit, and Salty Chips is there to back him up. So, good team coordination there.
Absolutely, and again, we are seeing that lane swap coming out from RP Farmers. They've done this every single game so far, and they're keeping the trend going. It's going to be that solo lane for Zenria, and of course, a solo lane for Salty Chips. Salty Chips has been in this situation all day so far. Zenria, not so much. It's usually been standard lanes throughout this tournament for him.
And Zenria has actually started with a Doran's Blade, which, you know, if he knew that he was going to be in a lane swap, he probably wouldn't have done that. You know, it's really not the item you want in a lane swap. You want some sort of defensive item in a lane swap, because you really have no kill pressure at all. And, you know, offensive items, really, that's what they're for. The Doran's Blade has a little bit of lifesteal on it, but if you're not going to be able to get in range to hit the minions, you're not going to make any use of it. So, unfortunately, he's just made the wrong item choice for the situation, and I think knowing that a lane swap was a possibility, he probably should have taken that into account and gone for some sort of defensive starting item.
Absolutely, and of course, Salty Chips going for that signature Ruby Crystal, trying to rush that Kindle Gem as fast as possible. And we put a lot of focus in Champion Select on this mid lane, and looking at it right now, there's quite a significant amount of damage coming out from Choo Choo's onto Lush, and he does have the sustain advantage with the amount of pots that he brought to lane.
Yeah, so I mentioned Vladimir was fairly weak in the early game. Choo Choo's has decided to supplement that by starting with Boots' 4 potions. You know, the Boots basically allowing him to get those 4 potions, and just having... Oh, Salty Chips gets hooked.
Yeah, but he's just going to take a little bit of poke, not enough kill potential currently. Of course, Ignite is on Junie, so that will stop the ultimate as soon as he hits level 6.
Yeah, so... You know, not going to do enough damage to go for the kill pressure, but, you know, still a lot of harass, and Salty Chips is going to have to be fairly careful, because if another hook lands, he's going to be in a bit of trouble there.
Yeah, but a gank in the mid lane, but it's just mostly a show of presence as the hook ends up landing on the Salty. Again, just poke all around the map. Zenria as well as Salty, both of them are having actually a fairly difficult time in these solo lanes.
Yeah, but that's pretty much what you'd expect. In fact, I'm actually impressed that both of them are keeping up fairly well. You know, only half the CS of the solo lane is generally you see this. They're at, you know, 12 and 11 respectively. Generally, you see about 10 CS in a 1v2 lane by about 10 minutes. So again, they're doing fairly well. Of course, both Mundo and Shyvana do have a long-ranged ability to be able to CS. In fact, we just saw that Lina on that Sivir was basically standing in front of the minion and used his spell shield to block the cleaver to stop Salty Chips from getting that extra CS. So when you're in a 1v2 lane, it can be a good idea to try and deny CS from your opponent by blocking their skill shots, but unfortunately for RP Farmers, they don't have the same option, because of course Shyvana's Flame Breath, it goes through champions and hits whatever's behind them as well. And Sharp is in the top lane as well.
Yeah, again, he's just showing a little bit of presence on the map as well. It looks like he might want to try and do something, but it's not turning out too well. Yep, there he is. He's popping the E. He's going to try and land something, but the Dark Binding ends up locking him up. He's going to have to walk away as he's taken down to just a little above half health.
Yeah, but he is providing a presence in this top lane, which is very important. It allows Zenria a little bit of time to get a few more creeps down, and looks like he's going to be able to back. No, he's actually going to decide to stay in lane, and Salty Chips has got Chronosphere here to help him out.
He does, and I'm surprised. Like usually, what you end up seeing as well is the supports end up going to help the solo laner, so it ends up being a 1v1 between the AD carry and, of course, essentially the top laner. But we're not seeing that in this game. It looks like both of them are just trying to do as fast a push as possible to get this tower down very quickly. And, of course, you do have RP farmers who want to do that in order to get a rotation to Dragon.
Yeah, well, I think that's the correct call, because we saw in our first game of the day that if you have a normal top laner and a support against an AD carry and support, the support doesn't really provide too much in terms of letting you CS. You're still 2 ranged versus 1 ranged and a melee, and if you want the melee champion to be farming, it's still very difficult to be able to do that, and of course it frees up presence for the 1v1 laner of the range versus melee champion. Melee champions tend to be able to at least somewhat handle AD carries in a 1v1 lane, so if one of these teams were to swap their support to the other lane, then it would probably work out disadvantageously for them.
Junie just tossing out the death sentences, showing, hey, I have it, and of course, if Salty Chips ends up getting hooked, there's quite a bit of burst, especially from Sivir, whose boomerang does quite a bit of damage early on in the game when no armor has been built yet.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of you miss 100% of the hooks you don't use, so use it when it's off cooldown, try and get a bit of a read down, see if you can predict where he's going to move, and if you do manage to hit him, then you can get quite a lot of damage down. And if you don't, because it's a 1v2 lane, you don't, like, Mundo doesn't have any pressure in this lane, even when the hook's down. In a 2v2 lane, you can't just use the hook willy-nilly, because if it's down, your opponents can realize, oh, hey, the hook's down, we can go in. In a 1v2 lane, Mundo doesn't have that option.
No, and he does get death sentence. The Ignite goes down. He pops the ultimate, but it's not going to be enough. And the first blood does go over to Big Circle Lena, and that's incredibly essential. And I do like the fact that Ignite was held and used in order to prevent that ultimate from Salty Chips to do anything.
And I think that's pretty much exactly why Junie decided to take the Ignite. Oh, nice gank in the mid lane.
Yeah, Chu's being forced to flash away to get to safety. But now you see pings going on around the Dragon area, and this is what you end up giving up by initiating a lane swap.
Yeah, and Luch managing to keep even with Choo-Choo's in this mid lane, but not the dominating performance he had over Best Feeder Peter in the last series. And especially as the game progresses, Vladimir is just going to naturally outscale Lulu. So at this point you would have to say that Choo-Choo's is ahead, despite, the actual gold is even, but in terms of how powerful he's going to be to impact this game, Choo-Choo's is most definitely ahead.
Especially with that first dragon going over to the side of Hebrews chapter 420. Chuffer, though, in the enemy jungle, ends up getting knocked up, has to pop the ghost in order to try and get away, which is perfectly fine. But he's looking for a possible re-engage? But no, just decides better of it. But this top lane will be going down fairly soon, and that's what you end up getting. You trade turret for the first dragon, and of course you end up rotating it back.
Yeah, so the first tower of the game hasn't fallen. On the hunt is popped.
And the flay backwards. The box is popped as well. And Kookie's not going to have a good time here as Big Circle Lena picks that one up. We jump to the mid lane as the Ignite is thrown down onto Choo-Choo's. And of course, Hemoplague is thrown out and immediately a pause.
Yeah, so unfortunately we do have a bit of a pause right now. We'll have to see if we can get this fixed for you guys fairly shortly.
And it turns out, well, they're in a internet cafe, and of course, Big Circle Lena has run out of time on the computer, so they're gonna refresh that time on there, and of course, get back into this game. But so far, it's 0-2 And two of those two kills are on Big Circle Lena on Sivir. Now, Sivir is a AD carry that's highly utility based, similar to that of Ashe, and has a hard time trying to tear through like double tank comps where they end up getting on her face. She just doesn't seem to have that damage output. Is that something that we'll be seeing in this game, or are they going to be getting ahead enough? They're going to be getting ahead fast enough in order to prevent that.
Well, quite possibly. I was thinking to myself in Champion Select that this Hebrews comp might end up being a bit low damage. I was awaiting on Choo Choo's pick before I really said anything, and the Vladimir is kind of what they needed. They just needed a high damage mid laner. You know, Shyvana doesn't really bring much damage. Hecarim actually brings a reasonable amount of damage from the jungle compared to a lot of other junglers. So, you know, he's a reasonable amount of damage there. But as you were saying, yes, Sivir is a fairly low damage AD carry. She's decent AoE damage, but in terms of single target damage, she just doesn't have that much single target damage. But the rest of the Hebrews comp with the Vladimir and the Hecarim, especially with that Hemo play amplifying all three carries damage, I think they might just have enough damage to take down RP farmers. But yeah, as you mentioned, that Mundo Salty Chips is going to be a huge front line, and the single target damage, especially from the Hebrews team comp, is a bit lacking, so they might have some trouble dealing with Salty Chips in the late game.
Absolutely. I do suspect that maybe a Morelos Namacon will be built in this game. Of course, if not, they're going to have to rely on that Ignite coming out from Junie to prevent the healing from Salty Chips. And looking at this game too, what you do when we were talking about the lane swaps is that you give up first dragon for first turret. We don't see the first turret going down. Actually, top lane turret only sitting on 14 health. It's literally one auto attack away. But Hebrews did a really good job of keeping that up, just delaying the inevitable.
I think both teams have actually done a fairly good job in recognizing what they needed to be doing so far in this game, but Hebrews have just been doing a better job of executing to this point. So, RP farmers, they've been trying to take down the top tower, and they've got a lot more damage on the top tower than Hebrews have got on that bottom tower. As you were mentioning, it's basically dead at this point. And they were looking for a couple of kills. Just a binding going to stop Junie from any aggression. But mostly they were looking for kills in the mid lane. They left Cookie on his own a couple of times, and they had Esk rotate into that mid lane. They had Chronosphere show a lot of presence in that mid lane. So they were recognizing they needed to get Lulu ahead of this Vladimir if they wanted Luch to be relevant in this game. But unfortunately for them, Choo Choo, he's been ganked again.
Yeah, he ends up trying to go in. He uses the pool to dodge out the explosive cast, which stops the gank right in its tracks. Very well timed in using those skills, and it's just back to the stalemate once again in every single lane.
Yeah, so Choo Choo's has just been playing very safe in this mid lane. He's been ganked a number of times. He realizes that it is RP Farmers' play to continue to gank him, and the fact that he hasn't died yet, and in fact is even in CS, is just a testament to how good of a player he is, and the rest of his team has been carrying elsewhere on the map. Chuffer and Chronosphere are going to find each other.
Yeah, now Chuffer kind of wants to go in on Chronosphere. You have the rotation from mid lane. Choo Choo's just around the side. Much more health than Lush. But again, the gank not resulting in anything, but the ultimate from Chuffer is down.
Yeah, so interesting decision to actually use that Onslaught of Shadows, but yeah, Chronosphere wasn't in too much trouble. Oh, nice body slam.
The tower dive, a beautiful body slam over the wall. Lush being forced to go away is going to die, but the kill of Choo Choo's will go over to Chronosphere 1-for-1, but Choo Choo's coming out on top considering that it was a 2-against-1 in that situation.
Yeah, so I feel that was a misplay from Choo Choo's. Of course, you don't really expect the jungler to be coming over that Wraith wall, but he just saw that Chuffer had gone onto Chronosphere. He knew Chronosphere was right there. He really should have respected the potential of that body slam to come over the wall. Onslaught on it,
On the hunt, ends up going in. There's the flay backwards. The box goes out. It's going to be Esk being eliminated from that fight, and the top turret goes down. So Hebrews chapter 420 doing a really good job of stopping the plan from Farm RP farmers.
Yeah, and that on the hunt has just been so potent in this game. I believe it's been popped. Has it got a kill every time it's been used? Maybe, I haven't seen it every time it's been used, but it's definitely got at least 2 of those 4 kills have been the result of that on the hunt being used aggressively. So the first one, of course, was Kuki in that top lane, just a bit overstaying his welcome, and Lena and Junie able to get on top of him when he was alone. Thanks to that on the hunt. It's just such a powerful ability, and it's really been the main reason that we've seen Sivir rise to popularity in the past few months.
Absolutely, and of course the kill spread is going to be 1-4. The gold lead about 3,000 gold difference. First dragon over in the side of Hebrews chapter 420, and the second dragon is going to be up in about 30 seconds. Already ward coverage from RP farmers is going to be put down, but the death sentence lands on the Chromosphere. Chromosphere in a little bit of trouble, but he's going to throw out his barrel in order to land that slow pool from Choo Choo's. A little bit premeditated there, not absolutely necessary in order to stay safe, but they clear out the pink ward, try to get the scuttle, and get vision of this dragon.
Yeah, so this scuttle crab's going to be fairly important for this dragon fight. You know, not only does it provide vision of the area, but the speed shrine is just very good if you want to fight around the area. Having that scuttle crab available to your team is very strong, and it looks like they may have started the dragon. No, it looks like they're peeling off. Oh,
and now we have a wet noodle fight in the bot lane, but there's a 4-man gank going into the mid. Hemoplague lands onto 3 people, and they're just trying to get this engage going. We jump down bot, those salty chips ends up going down. Onslaught of Shadows did miss, but that ultimate's not going to be available, so they're not going to have a giant frontliner. He's not going to be up until 20 seconds, and immediately Hebrews ends up starting up this dragon, and they have the team composition, they have the tools and the kits in order to secure this safely, but the death sentence not quite landing. There's the exploding cast, parting the seas, and that's going to be Zenrina taken down, giving a kill over to Lush. That's not someone who you want to give it to. Vladimir has the Ignite taking down on him. He's going to have to walk away, but he goes down to the Ignite. Now Junie is caught under the Tormented Soil, and Dragon going over to the side of RP farmers.
And it was just, I have to say that it was probably a misplay starting up that dragon on the side of Hebrews. They did not respect the AoE potential that came out of RP farmers, and just fighting this early in the dragon. Yes, they had a 5v4 advantage, but health bars on all sides were a bit low, and when health bars are low, it's a lot easier to pick up exit kills, especially when you start fighting the dragon like that. An amazing explosive cast from Chronosphere knocked 2 people back as well that were really low health, and it really allowed those cleanup kills from RP farmers to go around, and Kugi really shining in that fight with that Get Excited passive.
Absolutely, and just like that, they ended up evening out the gold lead with that mid tower being taken. So tower advantage to them, dragon advantage even across the board, gold even across the board. So let's see what they can do with this, let alone the fact that Lush, kind of the heart and soul and the savior of RP farmers, ended up getting 2 kills in that last fight.
Yeah, so he's going to be well on his way. He's got a needlessly large rod, so well on his way to a death cap. I'm assuming that's going to be his next item. In fact, Choo Choo's going for an Abyssal Scepter as his first, well, 1.5 item after that Hextech Revolver. I actually very much like that. We saw he actually built the Negatron component first, just because he was getting ganked so often in the mid lane, and the majority of the damage was magic, with Chronosphere and Luch doing primarily magic damage. So I feel that was... I mean, Abyssal Scepter on Vladimir is a good first item in and of itself, but I feel in this game especially it was a particularly good reactive purchase on the part of Choo Choo's.
Absolutely, and now we're just going back to another lull in the game, but good ward coverage coming out from both teams. You just see this bottom part of the map just lit up like a Christmas tree from both blue side and red side. Of course, the wet noodle fight is going to continue up in the top lane, Both of them have smite, both of them had teleport, but we're looking at a possible bush gank in bot. Nope, there's no one there, so they're just gonna walk away and just shove it up.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Well, there aren't really very many objectives to be taken except for perhaps this mid tower. Oh
And
gosh, Esk is
Esk
in
as
trouble.
well. There's going to be the lantern being taken, a flash being forced by Esk in order to get to safety. You do have a small split push happening here as Salty Chips tries to do as much work in the top lane as he can, but he's taken down to just less than half health, and Zenria probably looking to get some kills along with the rest of the team as they do make that rotation up.
Yeah, so Esk really looking for vision control, but unfortunately he can't be doing it by himself, especially when he doesn't know where Hebrews are. So he really has to be a lot more careful in future. It looks like Hebrews there's really not much happening in the game at this point because most of the outer towers have been taken. Really, the only big outer tower left to be taken is that mid lane on the side of RP Farmers. There is also an outer tower in the bot lane that it looks like Kookie's heading towards, but doesn't look like he's going to be able to take that. The teams are so evenly matched at this point that neither team can really get an advantage over the other, so you can't push, you can't siege right now just because you don't have enough of an advantage. Whichever team has the tower to back them up will be able to hold off the siege. So both teams are just farming right now, trying to get a few more items and potentially looking for picks, trying to establish vision control, looking for picks and trying to use those picks to maybe get some more objectives later.
And it's only 1,000 gold difference. That's not too much. Currently, this tower is getting a little bit of damage. They're looking to increase that gold lead from the side of Hebrews. 5-5 in kills. As you mentioned, there's not a whole lot to do currently on the map. I mean, Dragon's up in 1:40. They're going to try and get some vision control around that objective. As far as everything else goes, it's just wave clear and wait, wave clear and wait. Let's try and get a pick somewhere.
Yeah, so we should probably look at the item builds that are starting to come out. Of course, all four junglers and top laners have completed their Cinder Hulk, 3 of which have chosen to go for the challenging smite. So, they're going to be able to have a lot of dueling potential with that item, and a lot of wave clear as well. Luch has nearly got his death cap, which will actually be quite important because of course, Lulu, not only does her damage scale with ability power, but also her utility, that the defensive from the shields, the ultimate as well, and the speed boost from her Whimsy. Both AD carries sitting on an Infinity Edge and half an attack speed item, and in fact, Chuffer, he's pretty close to his Trinity Force. In fact, I believe he's about 500 gold from completing that, so that will probably be the next big power spike for Hebrews 420. So unfortunately for them, I don't think it looks like he's going to be able to get that completed before the dragon comes up in 30 seconds. So Choo Choo's is in a bit of trouble, but Chuff is here.
Yeah, the ultimate goes out, taking out Lush right away. Esk is going to be there, not going to live to see another day as Choo Choo's picks up that one. It is now 3v5. They're going to take down this mid lane turret. Dragon's up in 5 seconds, and this is probably something that they're going to be rotating to as a split push from Zenrina happens in the top lane.
Yeah, so a good counter gank there from Chuffer. They were looking to go onto Choo Choo's, but unfortunately at this point I think he's strong enough that they need more than just Lulu and Morgana, even if they want to take Choo Choo's on his own. And having the backup there from Chuffer that with the counter gank, really able to cement that advantage. 2 kills and a dragon. A bit unfortunate timing for RP Farmers on that gank, really able to not only get the tower but the dragon as well.
But that is a death cap now completed onto Lush. You mentioned that's going to help him out quite a bit. Of course, the score between the two mid laners fairly even, 2-2-1 on both sides, but essentially a 20 CS difference between the two mid laners in favor of Choo Choo's.
Yeah, so both mid laners, oh gosh, so a little bit of a wet noodle fight. I don't think too much is going to happen there, but Salty Chips is going very aggressively. He really doesn't want to be going too far into that jungle because Chuffer was right there recalling, although he was a little bit of low health, he probably could have, helped out. He has now finished his Trinity Force, in fact, so he's going to be doing a lot of damage. And Salty Chips has finished his Warmog's armor, so I guess that's just is why he really does not care at this point.
Yeah, especially with that ultimate going to be regenning quite a bit. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I would suspect that he's going to go Spirit Visage next, considering that Choo Choo's is such a priority target and even one of the main damage dealers from Hebrews, let alone the fact that his ultimate is just going to heal him even more so.
And speaking of which, Choo Choo's just bought a straight up death cap, did not have either of the components, spent 3,000 gold in one go, and his damage just went through the roof.
We're probably going to end up seeing that in the next team fight, which does seem to be coming fairly soon. You have everybody sieging up in the mid lane. I mean, other than Zenria, but Zenria is just doing a beautiful job of split pushing and keeping pressure in the side lanes.
Yeah, and he's now finished a Randuin's Omen as well, so he's going to be able to do quite a bit in these team fights, getting that AoE slowdown after he uses the Dragon's Descent. But at the moment, like you said, he's just split pushing, and RP Farmers has decided to handle this by going for a siege in the mid lane, going for that 4v5.
I don't know if that's the wisest choice. Choo Choo takes a little bit of poke, but is going to end up to use that blood transfusion in order to heal back up. Meanwhile, again, this giant wave being pushed in the bot lane is going to be a little bit of damage put down on that tier 2 bot.
Yeah, it looks like the minion waves are going to meet, but Zenria, he's just hanging out in the wings. In fact, he's looking towards the red buff, just putting a ward to make sure he's not suddenly flanked. But yeah, the Hebrew side doesn't have they don't have an excessive amount of wave clear, but Siva Vladimir is a moderate amount, and it was enough to the point where they could hold off that siege. That RP Farmers did get a decent chunk of damage onto that tower, but it was only about a third of the tower's health, so they wouldn't have been able to take that tower without some significant time investment.
Absolutely, and of course, big Circlina on that Sivir, mentioned it, able to clear out waves fairly well with that boomerang ricochet, and now trying to work towards that static shiv. That's going to be a huge amount of wave clear on that kit, but I have to question, most of the time you do see the Phantom Dancer being built onto Sivers, much like Kuki has, but Kuki on that Jinx is understandable to build the PD. Why static shiv on Sivir instead of that Phantom Dancer, especially with the composition that they're going up against?
Well, as you mentioned, it does provide a bit of extra pushing power, a bit of extra wave clear, but I think for the most part it's just a personal preference. Personally, I prefer the Phantom Dancer, but really the items are so similar that you can substitute one for the other, and while one might be slightly more effective in some situations compared to others, maybe Lena's just more used to having the burst damage of the static shiv and just prefers that item. There's really not too much difference between those two items.
There you have it. S now going to possibly get caught out, ends up landing a Dark Binding. There's not really a lot of follow-up on it. Choo Choo's walking forward, just not even caring of the potential that the enemy champions are going to be around the side. He has pool. He has a huge power spike. He'll survive any single one-on-one engage from the team.
And you can see Dragon's up in about a minute, and this has meant that Hebrews have really started invading aggressively on this red side jungle of RP Farmers, trying to get some vision down, trying to control the area, and making sure that they can secure away that next dragon.
Absolutely. Now, you have to ask, I mean, with Choo Choo's up in this top lane trying to deal with Salty Chips, and he's doing a really good job of it. Salty Chips is already taken down to about half, even popping the ultimate. With him being up there, there's no teleport from him. Dragon's going to be up in 30 seconds. Is he going to have to rotate down and give up that pressure? Because it does seem as if Salty Chips is going to stay up there.
Yeah, well, Dragon does still have 30 seconds, and Choo Choo's is going to be able to get there in plenty of time. He was just trying to really just stall, not intending to stay up there, just trying to stall Salty Chips and make sure he couldn't actually take the tower. Because, trading a dragon for an inner tower is not actually necessarily the best trade. In some situations it might be, but in this case it probably isn't, just because the map control of that inner tower is, it's quite valuable right now. And a nice binding. Ooh, nearly.
Finding it, but they end up walking away. So now you have Zenrina up in the top lane dealing with Salty Chips. Salty Chips down to about a quarter health, regardless of the Warmogs being built up. He's looking to build possibly into a Randuin's Omen next, maybe potentially even a Thornmail, depending on how he wants to go.
I think that will most likely be a Thornmail, because Randuin's Omen doesn't... Oh, a fight starting!
Oh, fight's going out as the ultimate from Hecarim goes onto this dragon. It's going to be Chronosphere taking extremely low, but does get the wild growth in order to survive just a little bit longer. The Soul Shackles is going to land onto one, as Salty Chips ends up coming into this fight now. He's trying to survive, and Lush is going to pick up one kill, and that kill is going to be on Junie. Choo-Choo's trying to do what he can, but he's going to go down. That's going to be a double on the Lush. They're going on the Lush hard right now as the Boomerang goes out, picks up that one, gives a double kill over to Big Circle Lena. And with this wave push up right here, and the fact that they are winning in numbers, this is going to be a tower down as Chuffer threatened his stuff.
And that fight was... I think that was just a matter of Hebrews. They were the ones initiating the fight, which meant that they were the ones ready for the fight. They had the extra second or two to get out the damage when the RP farmers weren't expecting it. Zenria actually got into the fight, completed his teleport before Salty Chips. By the time Salty Chips came into the fight, the rest of his team was about a quarter, a third health, and he came in, he teleported in, he tanked damage, he tanked all 5 Hebrews members for about 2 or 3 seconds. But unfortunately his team just had taken so much damage that they couldn't safely, hit the front line while he was distracting them. So I really think that was just a matter of Hebrews being ready for that fight, because they were the ones initiating it.
Absolutely, and of course after that fight, Thornmail has been completed onto Salty Chips, and surprised we're not seeing a Spirit Visage built as of yet, considering that is such an essential item onto Mundo. Of course, the kill spread 7-11, and third dragon going in favor of Hebrews. That's incredibly significant. I mean, they're going to try and stop the 4th dragon. Is that something like that Hebrews should be aware of and maybe bait out the dragon while simultaneously trying to take Baron? Or should RP farmers end up foregoing that 4th dragon and stopping it and just maybe try and take a cheeky Baron?
Well, right now, they all have a number of different options, but everything comes down to vision control. Whichever option they choose to do will depend on... They'll need to get vision control in order to be able to really look at those objectives, and both teams have actually been doing a fairly good job of controlling the vision in this game so far. It really has been a back and forth battle, both sides really putting their all into getting wards all over the map and making sure they have control of these objectives. So, Salty Chips being very aggressive here.
Yeah, but that's going to be on the hunt as well as that Dark Passage, bringing him to safety. And of course, that's an essential ultimate in that composition, down.
Yeah, but it's not the longest of cooldowns. In fact, I believe it's 100 seconds at rank 2. So, a minute and a half. It's significant, but it's not like you can't use it. It's not like a flash where it will be down, where a flash would be down for the next 5 minutes. But in fact, Hebrews have actually started on this Baron.
But they immediately back off of it. They're now just rotating the mid lane as there's 3 people sieging there. And again, we just see the giant frontliners in the bot lane just tussling back and forth. Now,
yeah,
RP farmers weren't aware of that Baron. I'm curious as to why they ended up calling it off. Maybe they just thought it was just too risky at the time.
Yeah, I have to wonder why they started and then why they decided to call it off, because, as you said, I don't think starting it was necessarily the best idea, just because there is some vision control for RP farmers in the area. The ward inside the pit wasn't there, but the wards around the pit were. So, it wasn't the safest Baron to do, which I guess they may have realized that and decided to immediately call it off. But RP farmers weren't actually collapsing when the Baron was started, but you'd have to imagine that if the entire team went towards the Baron area, that RP farmers would have taken note of that and maybe checked the area, and we may have seen a repeat. We, of course, don't forget the first dragon of the game went over to RP farmers because because Hebrews decided to start it a little bit early. In fact, sorry, that was the second dragon of the game. They decided to start it a bit early and were just caught doing it when they really shouldn't have been.
Absolutely, and of course that ward is spotted onto Baron, and we are just going right back into this farm fest. Still, the gold lead in favor of Hebrews, 48 to 54,000 respectively on each of these teams. Trinity Force completed. Yamu's Ghostblade now built onto Chuffer. We're seeing him build more damagey rather than tanky. Is that something that is wise, considering that your only other main tank is going to be Zenria? I mean, other than Thresh, but Thresh is going to be more of an off tank considering his low gold income.
Yeah, well, he's got the Cinder Hulk, and I actually think... Oh, Choo-Choo's has been caught.
Yeah, but he ends up using the pool right away. They're trying to stand on top of the lantern so he can't get out. He's being forced to flash away. Summoner Heal is used. Super Mega Death Rocket completely whiffs it. And wow, what a turnaround on that. Engages two members on the side. RP Farmers go down. It's going to be Zenria now being looked on, but Salty Chips being yanked away from the fight from that death sentence. Kuki going to be taken down by Big Circle Lina, and now Luch is going to be the next person. Chuffer trying to use as much speed as possible, ends up getting slowed up. Is he going to give the kill over? He does, but that's going to be four people now still up. One of those being Choo-Choo's, who's a huge damage dealer. Flash death sentence does not land. Ruden's Echo actually doing quite a significant amount of AoE damage, and they save this inhibitor turret just by the skin of their teeth.
And RP Farmers, it was a very good catch, but they didn't respect the Sanguine Pool. They used all of their abilities onto Choo-Choo's, and he just pressed W and dodged them all. Like, you really do have to account, oh, well, we've caught him, he's going to pull as soon as he can, let's savor our abilities for when the Sanguine Pool ends. Choo-Choo's managed to get out, admittedly on basically no health, but had they saved a few more of their abilities until after the Sanguine Pool actually finished, of course, Choo-Choo doesn't even have his Zhonya's yet. His pool was the only defensive ability he had. So as soon as that pool finished, he was vulnerable to all sorts of damage and crowd control, and because they'd used it and whiffed it on top of him while he was in the pool, they weren't able to manage to lock him down, and then a very good re-engage coming in from the flank from Chuffer and the teleport from Zenria, really able to turn around that fight once RP Farmers had used all of their primary abilities.
Absolutely, and I feel like a part of that too was that missed Super Mega Death Rocket. If that did hit, more damage would have been put into that fight. But right now, they're just circling around this dragon, and this dragon looks like it's just going to go over to Hebrews chapter 420, no problem whatsoever. And now that Dark Binding lands on Zenria, but it's not going to be too much. They're just going to be looking at the siege the lanes once again, except Chromosphere going in hard as the Dark Passions pulls him to safety.
Yeah, so unfortunately for RP Farmers, the death time has meant that they took a little bit too long to get back to that dragon, so it was able to be taken by Hebrews 420. So, wow, I just had a look at the minimap, and just look at the minimap with me, guys. Look at all of those blue wards and none of the red wards. Just look at that river, a litter of wards. So, they really want it. This Baron area is what's important now. Now that the dragon's down, those wards in the bottom side of the map going to be a lot less important. A red ping has just gone on to that pink ward in the top lane, and I believe that pink ward has been there for a long time. I'd have to check how long that's been there, but I'm pretty sure it's been there for quite a while. But we're only just now starting to see some of those wards cleaned out because Hebrews, they realize that this Baron is the area that they need to control, and they're starting to sweep out those wards that are in that Baron area.
Absolutely, and of course, as this game gets later and later, we're going to end up seeing Big Circle Lina, as we were talking about earlier, start to fall off in damage. Sivir is a champion that has a really difficult time dealing with frontline tanks and people who are going to constantly be sitting on her face. She ended up building the Blade of the Ruined King in order to try and deal with that, but still, her damage is going to end up falling off. At this point, does Does RP Farmers just need to end up stalling out until late game, or do they just need to try and end it faster, get some better objective controls? Because even then, although Sivir's going to fall off, Choo Choo's is just going to end up getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, well, as you're saying, you know, Sivir falls off a little bit, especially when compared to Jinx. Jinx, one of the best late game AD carries behind, you know, pretty much behind just the likes of Tristana. Jinx is such a strong AD carry in the late game with those passive resets and with those rockets, really able to wreak havoc on a fight. But you mentioned Choo Choo's. He's going to be so much stronger than Luch in the late game. Vladimir is just such a monster in the late game. Hecarim as well. Chuffer is going to be doing so much AoE damage, and with Choo Choo's and Chuffer together, you know, that Spirit of Dread, the Hecarim W, when they're doing so much damage together, he's going to be healing quite a lot as well. So he's going to be able to actually be fairly tanky in the backline of RP Farmers, even with the very few amount of tank items that he's building. So, you know, even though Sivir's going to fall off a little bit, they still really do have to worry about both Chuffer and Choo Choo's.
Absolutely, and of course, Ward Control now just trying to go back in favor of RP Farmers as the timers on their wards are starting to time out. Gotta regain the advantage that they had there. But it's gonna be Junie caught out in a little bit, ends up getting that body slam, pops the box that hits absolutely no one. The death sentence does land, but it's gonna be the black shield that prevents the death leap, and of course, any sort of lockdown that they were looking for. And now they're just looking to try and maybe bait Baron. They're staying around this area. With the Scuttle Crab secured in their favor.
Yeah, it was a good collapse there from the rest of Hebrews 420, realizing that Junie was in trouble and that if they all collapsed they could save him. That's exactly what happened, and RP Farmers, again, respecting that potential from the collapse of Hebrews and just backing off. They did burn the Thresh box, which is actually a fairly long cooldown for an ultimate, so you know that's not going to be available for another couple of minutes. But oh wow, Luch and Chuffer are fighting.
Yeah, it's going to be Lushi going to be able to pick up that one, no problem whatsoever. Does have to use the Wild Growth in order to secure it, though. And just looking at these items build, we do have Spirit Visage now completed onto Salty Chips, which is essential considering that his ultimate is going to heal him for so much.
Yeah, and it's also, as you mentioned before, going to provide him a bit of resistance against Choo Choo's. But with that catch onto Chuffer, it looks like RP Farmers are going on this Baron.
Yeah, and they are burning through this Baron fairly quickly. They can't really, it's not really being able to get contested, so they'll get that one for free, but now they need to hurry up and back, considering the double pressure from both mid and bot lane onto those turrets.
Yeah, so I don't know if Hebrews recognized that Baron was going on and decided to leave it, or if they just didn't know it was going on, but either way, they certainly know now, and they're not going to be very happy about it. Salty Chips going straight into the backline.
Yeah, he's now trying to sit on the face of Big Lina, but it's instead going to be Lush. Gonna pick that one up. Choo Choo's ends up using that Zhonya's Hourglass. He's gonna try and survive. Ends up getting body slammed and knocked away from the ultimate. Picks up a kill in the process though as X goes down. A flash body slam does miss and the pool goes out in order to survive just a little bit more. Salty Chips picking that one up. So they don't save the tower, but they do pick up a few kills in return. Of course, Dragon's gonna be up in 40 seconds, so they're gonna try to move towards that objective.
A lot of high impact cooldowns burned in that fight, but as you mentioned, RP Farmers, they came out ahead. 50-second death timer on Choo Choo's. He's not even going to be close to this dragon when it's fought, and as you mentioned, it's up very soon, and it looks like that RP Farmers are probably going to be able to take away this dragon, get their second one for themselves, more importantly, deny the fifth one from Hebrews, and then continue to use this Baron to push. It looks like they're going to go for this mid tower first, potentially rotate for the dragon afterwards, but they've got to be worried because there's a Hecarim coming in.
Yeah, Hecarim ends up using the ultimate, but the flash from Kuki gonna try to get into safety. The Wild Growth ends up landing a knockout, and Chuffer, who's just completely knocked out of this fight. The body slam lands onto two, and they do end up taking that tower with the help of the Baron buffed minions. Are they gonna end up rotating down to this dragon to try and get that fifth one denied?
Yeah, the minion wave. The minion wave was a fair way away, so they couldn't continue to continuing to siege there would have been inefficient for their time, so they do go to this dragon. In that fight, just look at the red side jungle of Hebrews right there. Sivir is right now on top of a blue ward. That is where Chuffer came from. They knew, RP Farmers knew that Chuffer was about to come in. They were ready for him, and they had Chronosphere right around the corner, ready to counter that. Very well played there, well baited from Kuki and Esk.
And of course, they steal away that blue buff, throw it on the Lush, we get onto that champion. And of course, they're going to rotate down to bot lane now, try to push down this tower. And of course, this tower, one of the most difficult towers to defend overall on the map.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty much a free tower. Baron buff only has about 10 seconds left or so, but it's going to be enough to take this tower. But unfortunately, Baron buff is pretty much out, so I don't think that RP farmers are going to get any more objectives from that Baron buff. But that said, they did get quite a number of objectives. They got both inner towers in the middle lane and the bottom lane, as well as the dragon, and a number of kills in the duration of that Baron buff. So RP farmers definitely able to get back into this game. And that all came off a Baron buff, and the Baron buff all came off of a single pick onto Chuffer, where Luch and Chuffer were dueling each other, and Luch came out ahead. So it really is, League of Legends really is this game of snowballing. A single play can result in several plays over the course of the next few minutes, and we saw that play out in the last few minutes here.
Absolutely. Of course, Lush now getting almost fully into his build is working onto that Zhonya's Hourglass. Between the two mid laners, it's a 2,000 gold difference in favor of Lush. So Lush is 2,000 ahead of Choo Choo's. So working towards that.
Oh.
Like I said, Zhonya's, but a fight breaking out in the jungle as Junie is there, but around the back side, it's going to be Chuffer zoning out Kuki. Kuki's not going to be able to get away, is taken down by Zenria, and of course the Hemo Plague doing quite a bit of damage as well as Lush gets eliminated also, and just like that, the advantage going right back into the favor of Hebrews chapter 420, and they're going to shove down this mid lane with timers being at 60 seconds. Going to be looking like a tower.
This is going to be at least an inhibitor and maybe even more. That was a very bad fight for RP farmers. Luch went very aggressive, and importantly, they left Kuki all on his own. This tower's not going to be able to be defended by RP farmers, nor is this inhibitor. The interesting thing will be to see whether they decide to keep going, and it looks like they will actually. They're looking to finish this game 20 seconds on S.
Absolutely, but there's the death sentence on the Chronosphere. Chronosphere using a body slam, landing on 3, but one Nexus tower already falls down, and they're just trying to do much more. Salty Chips is going to survive a little bit longer, but there's the second Nexus turn, and the Nexus is now going down, eliminated, done, explosion, and that's game 1 of this best of 3. Of course, Hebrews chapter 420 taking that game away.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate because, 5 minutes of a real big power play from RP farmers. They got the pick, they got the Baron, they got the towers, they got the dragon, they got the kills, and then just a misplayed fight resulting in a 3-0. And at that stage of the game, that's just game. Of course, they left Kuki alone while he didn't have his flash up, and he just got absolutely obliterated by Chuffer. So unfortunately for RP farmers, little bit of a misplayed fight there, just costing them the game entirely when they definitely had a chance to win it. So I believe we will be back shortly for game 2 in the series.
Absolutely. So don't go anywhere, guys. Going to toss some ads at you, but we will be back with game 2 of this best of 3.
Mercenaries are plotting. Armies are gathering. Fabled enemies are hiding in the shadows, itching for revenge. Will you be pure enough to win when the dirtbags come looking for you? Get pure precision with a true 8200 DPI Pro Aim laser sensor. Get pure speed with a 32-bit Turbo Core V2 processor. Get pure command power with the Easy Shift button duplicator. Get pure atmosphere with a 16.8 million color lighting system. Before you get your hands dirty, get pure. Rocket Cone Pure. Core Performance Gaming Mouse.